So here's a big question for you. Have you ever wondered if you're truly living up to your full potential? I mean, it's a huge thing to think about, right? It's something the psychologist Abraham Maslow spent his entire life on. He had this term for it, self-actualization, that inner drive we all have to become everything we possibly can be. But that brings up a really tough challenge.
How in the world do you measure that? Seriously, how do you put a number on something so deep, so personal? How do you quantify fulfilling your unique talents? For decades, this question completely stumped psychologists. It just seemed, well, unmeasurable.
You see, for the longest time, self-actualization was more of this beautiful, philosophical idea than a hard scientific concept. It's all about realizing your talents, fulfilling your potential. Maslow was convinced it was a basic human need, just like food or safety. The real trick, though, was figuring out how to take this amazing idea out of the realm of theory and into the lab.
And that is exactly what a bunch of researchers set out to do. It basically kicked off this quest that would last for decades, all to create a tool that could actually measure this incredibly elusive state of being.
The first big swing was way back in 1974 with something called the Personal Orientation Inventory, or POI for short. And over the next 20 years or so, scientists just kept building on that, creating shorter and more focused tests like the short index and the brief index. Each one was another step, another attempt to really nail down the values and behaviors of these so-called self-actualizing people.
Now, here's a little bit of trivia for you, something that's just fantastic. Maslow himself, the guy who came up with the whole idea, took that very first test, the POI, not long before he died. And the result? He scored kind of in the middle, not fully self-actualized. Can you believe that? The father of the concept didn't even ace his own test, which just goes to show you how incredibly tricky this puzzle was to solve.
So for years, the quest just kind of chugged along. But then, more recently, a psychologist named Scott Barry Kaufman decided, you know what, let's try something new. He wasn't just going to make another test. No, he wanted to put Maslow's original ideas themselves under a modern scientific microscope. Kaufman's goal was brilliant. Go right back to the source. Maslow had originally laid out these 17 characteristics of self-actualizing people, but honestly, they were based more on his personal observations than on hard data. Kaufman wanted to see which of those traits could actually stand up to real scientific testing today. It was time for a major update.
And this is what came out of all that work. On the left, you've got Maslow's original 17 characteristics. Kaufman took those ideas, surveyed hundreds and hundreds of people, and then used statistical analysis to see which traits naturally clumped together. And he managed to boil that big list down to the 10 core, scientifically validated dimensions you see there on the right. Pretty cool, huh?
Let's look at a few examples so you can see how much cleaner this made everything. Maslow had separate ideas for spontaneity and creativeness, but Kaufman found they were really part of one bigger thing he called creative spirit. Same with autonomy and resistance to enculturation. Turned out they were just two sides of the same coin, authenticity. And yeah, even that really tough German word, Gemeinschaftsgefühl, got a much clearer update to just humanitarianism.
Okay, so you've built a new scale. Awesome. But that's only step one. The next, and honestly the most crucial step, is proving that the thing actually works. In psychology, we call this validation.
So what's validation? Well, it's basically just checking to see if your new tool measures what you say it measures. And the way Kaufman did this was by comparing people's scores on his new self-actualization scale with their scores on other tests we already know are reliable. If his scale was legit, you'd expect to see some pretty clear connections.
And the connections he found, they were really powerful. For instance, he found a correlation of 0.58 with a big personality trait called plasticity. Now, in psychology, anything over 0.5 is a really strong link. And plasticity is all about being curious, exploring, being open to new things, which is exactly what you'd hope to see in someone reaching for their potential. And it didn't stop there. He also found a really strong connection, a correlation of positive 0.49 with life satisfaction. This showed a clear, statistically significant relationship. The higher someone scored on these self-actualizing traits, the happier and more satisfied they tended to be with their life as a whole. I mean, that just makes sense, right?
And maybe the most compelling piece of evidence was this. He found a strong negative correlation of negative 0.49 with depression. That means as one goes up, the other goes down. The higher a person's score on self-actualization, the lower their reported levels of depression were. This was huge. It was rock-solid proof that this new scale was really tapping into a state of positive mental well-being.
All right, so after all this science, all these numbers, what's the big takeaway? Why does any of this actually matter? Why should we care that we can finally measure self-actualization?
It matters because this research transforms one of the most hopeful and inspiring ideas in psychology into something real, something concrete. What was once this beautiful, almost philosophical concept is now a tool we can actually use to study, to measure, and most importantly, to work on ourselves.
So what does this tool really give us? Well, for researchers, it's a game changer. It's a way to finally study human potential scientifically. For the rest of us, it's like a roadmap for personal growth, a clear framework of characteristics we can actually develop. And you know, at the end of the day, it just brings one of psychology's most famous and optimistic theories right into the 21st century.
So this long quest to measure our highest potential has finally hit a breakthrough. We have a map now, one that's built on Maslow's incredible vision, but sharpened by modern science, which really just leaves one final, very personal question. Now that we have a better way to understand our potential, what are you going to do with yours?